All right, we're going to be live in a second. All right, let me get it on the cloud. We're back, everyone. Sorry for that short intermission there. We're back, and we're going to be reading about basically what's the original. All right, we're going to be live in a second. All right, let me get it on the cloud. Hold on, my bad, guys. I hate it when it does that. The live does an echoing. Sorry about that. So like I said before, we are going to be doing a live, basically a live recording, not recording. We're going to be doing reading here of Exodus 15, and this is about the Psalm of Moshe. This is the original Psalm of Moshe here. So here you go. It says here, Exodus 15, verse 1. Then Moshe sang, and the children of Yasharal this psalm to Elohim, and spoke, saying, let us sing to Yahuwah, for he is greatly esteemed. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. He was to me a helper, protector for salvation. This is my Elohim, and I will esteem him, my father's Elohim, and I will exalt him. What's interesting here is you have, here's an expounding here in the Targum Onkelos here. He has said by his word, the us of Genesis 1:26, that he will be mine to redeem. This is my Elohim, and I will build him a set-apart place, the Elohim of my fathers, and I will worship before him. It's kind of interesting. The Onkelos is giving like a historical expounding there about building him a temple and all that, and how later on you see King David doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting. But I like how it says he said by his word. So it's showing that the word of Yahuwah is a person. Okay. Yahuwah bring wars to nothing. Yahuwah, his name. That's an important verse there. I would make a note of Exodus 15:3. So what is his name? Is his name the Lord God? No. Yahuwah is his name. Okay. He has cast the chariots of Pharaoh and his army into the sea, the chosen mounted captains. They were swallowed up in the Red Sea. He covered them with the sea. They sank to the depth like a stone. Your right hand, oh, Yahuwah, has been esteemed in strength. Your right hand, oh, Yahuwah, has broken the enemies. Making little notes here. So multiple times we've seen his right hand being referenced as what actually destroyed the Egyptians. Right? And in the abundance of your esteem, you have broken the adversaries to pieces. By the way, FYI, guess what the Hebrew word for adversary is? Shaitan, Satan. Mm-hmm. So, and that goes to a whole nother rabbit trail, but Satan is not his name, okay? Satan just means enemy, adversary. So, FYI. So, technically in the Hebrew here, it probably says you have broken down the Satans, just FYI. By the way, also another reference to Enoch. Enoch explains that there's more than one quote-unquote adversary, Satan, okay? So, Satan's not the main enemy of Yahuwah's name, okay? It's just a title. Okay. To pieces you send forth your wrath. It devoured them as stubble. That kind of reminds me of Malachi there. And how we are going to devour our enemies as stubble when Yahuwah returns. And by the breath of your anger, the water parted as under. The waters were congealed as a wall. The waves were congealed in the midst of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil, I will satisfy my soul, I will destroy my sword. With my sword, my hand shall have dominion. You sent forth your wind, the sea covered them. and they sank like lead in the mighty water. What I like about the Unkalos here is it says in that same verse, you spoke by your word. The sea covered them over. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. So again, we see Yahushua being mentioned in the Unkalos version there. Okay. Said by your word. Okay. Who is like you among the mighty ones? And for us to fully understand this, I would explain to someone, you might want to do some studying into the scriptural concept known as the divine council. Okay, why it's saying who is like you among the mighty ones. Okay, lowercase GODS. Okay, I would really recommend people study into Psalms 82 and what Psalms 82 is actually referring to understand that. To understand who are the mighty ones he's referring to. Okay. Esteemed and set apartness, marvelous in splendor or splendors, doing wonders. You stretched forth your right hand. The earth swallowed them up. So this is showing here the earth, the Eretz, is alive. It can swallow up people. So here we go. Your right hand. Okay. And we're going to go here. You have guided in your righteousness this, your people whom you have redeemed by the strength you have called them into your set apart resting place. The nations heard and were angry. Pains have seized on the dwellers among the Philistines. Then the princes of Edom and the chiefs of Moab hasted, trembling, took hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Let trembling and fear fall upon them by the greatness of your arm. So interesting. Now, this is where I like the Septuagint over the Targum here in this verse, because the Targum just says your power. I like how the Septuagint says the greatness of your arm. Of your arm. Let them become as stone till your people pass over. O Yahuwah, till this your people pass over, whom you have purchased. What does that sound like? New Testament, anyone? We've been bought by a price, right? We've been bought with a price. Who bought us?
Not with perishable things such as silver.
Who bought us though in the New Testament? The Father or the Son? Interesting. And I would definitely use that as a oneness verse right there.
Yeah.
Because the Father's purchasing them in Egypt, from Egypt, but yet in the New Testament, Yahushua purchases them with his blood. Interesting. Bring them in and plant them in the mount of their inheritance in your prepared habitation, which you, O Yahuwah, have prepared. The set apart place of Yahuwah, which your hands have made ready. Interesting. Yahuwah reigns forever and ever. Wow, I really like how the Unkalos says here. The Unkalos version of Exodus 15:18 connects with the book of Daniel, by the way, in Daniel 7, I believe, where it talks about the kingdom. So it says here in the Unkalos, the kingdom of Yahuwah endures forever and forever evermore. That's interesting. Interesting terminology there, the kingdom. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with the chariots and horsemen into the sea, and Yahuwah brought upon them the water of the sea. But the children of Yashrael walked through dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, having taken a timbrel in her hand, and there went forth, and all the women after her with timbrels and dances. And Miriam led them, saying, let us sing to Yahuwah, for he has been very greatly esteemed. The horse and the rider he has cast into the sea. So Masha brought up the children of Yashral from the Red Sea and brought them into the wilderness of Sur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water to drink. I find like an interesting parallel. I don't know if anyone else caught that in verse 22, but 3 days, right?
Yeah.
In a wilderness. Well, technically, Yahushua was in, right? He was in the grave in Sheol for 3 days. Sheol, I would consider like, kind of spiritually like a wilderness, barren land. A lot of times in prophecy, you'll see a barren land be compared to a habitation for demons and stuff like that. And we know there's certain entities down there in the pit. So I'm just saying there might be a parallel there, possibly. I might be reaching a little bit, but there could be a parallel there with the 3 days in the wilderness, 3 days in Sheol, and the fact that they had no drink to water. Yahusha's the, eternal living waters. Just saying. All right, so Masha brought up the children of Yashua from the Red Sea, brought them into the wilderness. Okay, we just read that of Sur. They were there 3 days in the wilderness, found no water to drink. They came to Marah and could not drink of Marah, for it was bitter. Therefore, he named the name of the place Bitterness. And the people murmured against Masha, saying, what shall we drink? And Masha cried to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah showed him a tree. And he cast it into the water, and the water was sweetened. Therefore, he established to him ordinances and judgments. Therefore, he proved him or tested him and said, if you will indeed, and we're at verse 26 of Exodus 15, by the way, if you will indeed hear the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to do things pleasing before him, and will hearken to his commands and keep all his ordinances, no disease which I brought upon the Egyptians will I bring upon you, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim that heals you. Now, what's interesting in the Unkelos version here of the Targums, of that same verse, it says, if hearkening, you will hearken unto who? The word of Yahuwah, your Elohim, and will do what is right in his eyes, and will listen to his precepts and keep all his statutes. None of the maladies which I have set upon the Mitzrayim will I put upon you, for I'm Yahuwah your healer. So the Unkelos Targum actually says the word of Yahuwah is their Elohim, and it's his commandments. Interesting. Okay, and they came to Elam. There were 12 fountains of water and 70 stems of palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Interesting. And they departed from Elam, and all the congregation and children of Yashral came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai. And on the 15th day in the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt, all the congregation and children of Yashral murmured against Masha and Aharon. Okay. And the children of Yashral said to them, would we have died by Yahuwah in the land? Whoops. Okay. So we were at, I think we were at verse 3 here.
Mhm.
Okay. So it says, would we have died smitten by Yahuwah in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots and ate bread to satiety, meaning to be satisfied? For you have brought us out into this wilderness to slay all this congregation with hunger. So interesting here. So we see the murmuring going on already Already they're missing the food of Egypt. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, behold, I rain bread upon you out of heaven, and the people shall go forth, and they shall gather daily portion for the day, that I may try them whether they will walk in my law or not. And it shall come to pass on the 6th day, they shall prepare whatsoever they have brought in, and it shall be double of what they shall have gathered for the day daily. And Moshe said, Aaron said to all the congregation of children of Yashar, at evening you shall know that Yahuwah has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the splendor of Yahuwah, inasmuch as he hears your murmuring against Elohim. Or I guess it should be Yahuwah here. Or your tumults are heard before Yahuwah. And who are we that you continue to murmur against us? So it's kind of like the same concept we see later on where Yahuwah said to, who's it, Samuel? He's like, they have not rejected you, they rejected me.
Yeah.
Right? Moshe said, this will be when Yahuwah gives you in the evening, sunset, flesh to eat and bread in the morning to satiety. Because Yahuwah has heard your murmuring, which you murmur against us. What are we? For your murmuring is not against us, but against... Ooh, now we're getting controversial here. The Septuagint says Elohim, but the Unkilos Targum here says, you murmur against the word of Yahuwah. Ooh. Interesting. So that's, what is that? Chapter 16, verse 9. Okay, the word of Yahuwah. Okay. And Moshe said to Aaron, say to all the congregation of children of Yashar, come near before you, Elohim, for he has heard your murmuring, or I should probably say Yahuwah there. Come near before Yahuwah, for he has heard your murmuring. And when Aaron spoke to all the congregation of children of Yashar, they turned toward the wilderness. Then the splendor of Yahuwah appeared in the cloud. And like I was mentioning before, that's another name for Yahushua pre-incarnate, was the splendor of Yahuwah. Okay, splendor of Yahuwah. So that's verse 10 there of chapter 16. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, I have heard the murmuring of the children of Yasharal. Speak to them, saying, towards evening you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be satisfied with bread, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. And it was evening, and the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning came to pass, as the dew ceased round about the camp, that behold, on the face of the wilderness was a small thing like white coriander seed, as frost upon the earth. And when the children Yashral saw it, they said one to another, what is this? For they knew not what it was. And Moshe said to them, this, the bread which Yahuwah has given you to eat. This is that which Yahuwah has appointed. Gather of it each man for his family, a homer for each person, according to the number of your souls. Gather each of you with his fellow lodgers. And the children of Yashral did so, and gathered some much and some less. And having measured the homer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that had gathered less had no lack. Each gathered according to the need of those who belonged to him. And Moshe said to them, let no man leave of it till morning. And they did not hearken to Moshe, but some left of it till morning. Mm-hmm. And it bred worms and stank, and Moshe was irritated with them. And they gathered it every morning, each man what he needed. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass on the 6th day, they gathered double what was needed, 2 homers for one man. And all the chiefs of the congregation went in and reported it to Moshe. And Moshe said to them, is not this word which Yahuwah spoke tomorrow, the Sabbath, a set-apart rest to Yahuwah, bake? And I know some people disagree with this concept that this doesn't mean that you don't cook on the Sabbath. To me, it's pretty obvious. It's a commandment not to cook on the Sabbath. It says right here in the context of the sixth day. It says, bake that which you will bake. Seethe that you will seethe, meaning cook what you will cook on this day. And all that is over, leave it to be laid by for the morrow. Why? Because you don't cook on the Sabbath. So you're cooking for 2 days. That's the point of that commandment in verse 23 there of Exodus 16. They left of it till the morning as Moshe commanded them, and it stank not. Neither was there worm in it. And see, this is the argument that my fellow brothers and sisters out there that believe this is not a commandment for all time. They'll say, well, see, this is miraculous. It didn't rot the next day. So they wouldn't have been keeping this commandment where they come into the land. The point is, though, the commandment, it's a general commandment given that you are supposed to bake what you will bake and cook what you will cook on that day. It's not conditional on whether the food's going to rot or not the next morning. That's not the point of why he gave that commandment. So I get what they're trying to say, but I respectfully disagree. And Moshe said, eat today, basically eat what you laid up yesterday for today. For today is a Sabbath to Yahuwah. It shall not be found in the plain, meaning you're not supposed to gather food on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to get more food on the Sabbath. You should have cooked enough food the day before. Okay. 6 days you shall gather it. On the seventh day is a Sabbath, for there shall be none on that day. And it came to pass on the seventh day, some of the people went forth to gather and found none. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, how long are you unwilling to hearken to my commands and my law? See, for Yahuwah has given you this day the Sabbath. Therefore, he has given you on the sixth day the bread of 2 days. You shall sit each of you in your houses. Let no one go forth from this place on the seventh day. Now, again, I know some people like to point to this and say, well, you're leaving your house on the Sabbath to go to fellowship. Yeah, but that's obviously that's different from them leaving their houses to gather food on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So what he's saying in verse 29 is you shall not leave your houses to gather food. It's not saying that you can't leave your house at all.
Right.
Because we see later on in the land, they're leaving their houses to go to the synagogue. So obviously there's a context there we're not understanding.
Yahushua himself traveled on the Sabbath to go.
The point of not leaving your place was there's certain things you should not be doing when leaving your place. You should not be gathering sticks on the Sabbath. We see later on Yahuwah institutes that. So you should not be going out to gather food on the Sabbath. So mainly the reason he's saying do not go out of your houses in that verse is the context of the bread he's given them for 2 days. So they should not have to leave their houses to gather food. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense there in verse 29. In that context, okay? And the people kept the Sabbath on the seventh day, okay? Notice how it says the seventh day, not a seventh day, not whatever day you want to make the seventh day. There's one seventh day, okay? There's one Sabbath. There's not multiple Sabbaths, okay? And the children of Yashrael called the name of it manna or man, and it was white coriander seed. The taste of it was as wafer with honey. I don't know why they're complaining if it's tasting like that. I don't know. That to me sounds great. Tastes like a wafer with honey. Man, I'll give up all the food I have right now for that. Shoot.
Especially the situation we're in right now.
I'm just saying, Mom, that don't sound too bad. A wafer with honey?
It doesn't sound bad.
Like picture you dunking a vanilla wafer right now in honey.
Yeah, I know.
Okay? I'm just saying.
I'm dying for something sweet right now.
Okay? That doesn't sound too bad. I don't know why they're murmuring so much.
Oh.
And Masha said, this, the thing which Yahuwah has commanded, fill a homer with manna to be laid up for your generations, that they may see the bread which you ate in the wilderness when Yahuwah led you forth out of the land of Egypt. And Masha said to Aaron, take a golden pot and cast it into one full homer of manna, and you shall lay it up before Yahuwah to be kept for your generations. As Yahuwah commanded, Moshe and Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Yasharel ate manna 40 years until they came to the land. They ate the manna until they came to the region of Phoenicia. And I know that's one of the arguments people will say that again, that will try to make a rationalization that this was only a commandment when they were eating the manna and stuff like that, and you can cook on the Sabbath. And again, I would just say I completely disagree. If that's the case, what would be the purpose for preparation day? Number one, that's what I would like to ask people that seriously believe that this commandment in this particular chapter was only for when they were given manna and quail or whatever. If that's the case, there should be no reason for preparation day whatsoever. Preparation day would have no purpose then. If you don't have to cook food for 2 days on the sixth day, and you don't have to worry about having enough food for the Sabbath to not cook on the Sabbath, then there's really no point for preparation day, in my opinion. So I'm just saying. But anyway, verse 36. Now the homer was a 10th part of 3 measures. Okay, and now we're about to read the last chapter of our Torah portion in Exodus. But before that, I noticed Brother Joshua was patiently waiting. I'm going to go to you, brother, if you got anything to add. Or
yeah, they were shepherds, and they left Egypt with animals, if I'm not mistaken. So why didn't they just eat the animals that they had?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like you said, it seems to be to a currency, I guess, or maybe the animals were used for something like yoking. Yeah, maybe they were used for working the farms. Yeah, I think that's the only answer I could give why they weren't eating their own, what they had.
Right.
Or maybe somewhere along the line, we don't have it in our canon today, but maybe Yahuwah told them not to. Maybe he's like, this was kind of like Yahuwah wanted them to depend on him, I guess.
As much as they were disobeying Yahuwah, if he told them that and they were complaining about food, I don't think they would have listened to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it seems like that's the purpose of why Yahuwah is like allowing them to be hungry, is because he wants them to fully depend on him as the provider, as one of his names is what? Yahuwah Yireh, Yahuwah provides.
Yeah.
So, it seems like that could be a possibility. And he's actually on purpose, because in the previous chapters, this is not the first time they complain about not having food or water to drink. And I think the first time Masha gives them the message that Yahuwah is testing you to see if you'll obey him, or maybe that's in another book of the Torah. But we see constantly Yahuwah is like trying them with hunger to see if they're going to serve him or not. So on purpose, Yahuwah is like, doing it to try to get them to, humble themselves. And we can learn a lot from that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good point there. Why weren't they eating their flocks? They're so hungry. Why are they not? It's almost like they were just more or less lusting after the old food of Egypt. We have no idea what they were probably eating in Egypt. They were probably eating like gourmet, like especially with
kings.
Especially with Joseph's generation.
Yeah.
Who knows that they could have been missing.
No, they were eating good there, definitely.
I remember when Joseph and he brought his brothers over, they had a feast. The Pharaoh of Joseph's time made a feast for his brothers and his dad. So, who
Pretty
knows?
crazy they were eating so good and yet they were in bondage, like they were servants. Or
I wonder.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of like the old adage, you'll keep your slaves, you just give them bread and circus. It's kind of like that adage. It's like they probably were giving them good food, but they were, in a way they looked at as, well, if we feed them, they're not going to complain. And it's almost like, and also we got to understand too that slavery part didn't happen until they were already in Egypt for a good bit. The slavery didn't happen until that Pharaoh died. So the first Pharaoh that Joseph was with, where he had his children living there for a good bit with that Pharaoh, wasn't until the Pharaoh that knew Joseph died that the slavery started happening. So the forceful slavery started happening. So technically you had a couple of generations where they're not living that bad down there, But anyway, that's a lot of good questions. A lot of good questions. So I think we already went through all the differences with where the word of Yahuwah is mentioned in that chapter. So I'm not going to rehash that. So let's see. We got Exodus 17. And that's it. So we're going to start Exodus 17. And all the congregation of the children of Yashar departed from the wilderness of sin, according to their encampments by the word of Yahuwah. Interesting. And they encamped in Raphadim, and there was no water for people to drink. I wonder if it's named Raphadim. I wonder if there's like any connection to the Rephaim or something. I wonder. The people reviled Moshe, saying, "Give us water that we may drink." And Moshe said to them, "Why do you revile me? Why do you tempt Yahuwah?" That's a little parallel there to Matthew chapter 4. Yahushua told Satan, he rebuked Satan. What did he say to say? Satan's like, why don't you fall up there? Don't you know that scripture says his angels will catch you? Yahushua's like, you don't tempt Yahuwah your Elohim.
That's right. You wouldn't success.
So it's pretty interesting parallel there. Verse 3, the people thirsted there for water, and there the people murmured against Moshe, saying, "Why is this? Have you brought us out of Egypt to slay us and our children and our cattle with thirst?" And Moshe cried to Yahuwah and said, "What shall I do to this people? Yet a little while and they will stone me." And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Go before this people and take yourself of the elders of the people and the rod with which you smote the river. Take in your hand, and you shall go. Behold, I stand there before you. Come on the rock in Horeb, and you shall smite the rock, and water shall come out of it. And the people shall drink." And Moshe did so before the sons of Yasharal. And he called the name of that place Temptation and Reviling, because of the reviling of the children of Yasharal, and because they tempted Yahuwah, saying, "Is Yahuwah among us or not?" It's interesting to note that the Untitled Targum says they tempted before Yahuwah, saying, "Is the majesty of Yahuwah among us or not?" Pretty interesting. And Amalek came and fought with Yasharal in Raphadim. And Moshe said to Yahushua, "Choose out for yourself mighty men. Go forth and set the army in array against Amalek tomorrow. And behold, I shall stand on the top of the hill, and the rod of Elohim will be in my hand." And Yahushua did as Moshe said to him. And he went out and set the army in array against Amalek. And Moshe and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass, when Moshe lifted up his hands, Yasharal prevailed. And when he let down his hands, Amalek prevails. So it seems like Yahuwah's spirit supernaturally is like giving Masha power here. And for some reason, whenever Masha lets down the rod, it seems like Yashrael is losing whenever that happens. But the hands of Masha were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat upon it. And Aaron and supported his hands, one on this side and one on the other side, and the hands of Masha were supported till the going down of the sun. Interesting. Going down of the sun. So the sun doesn't stand still then. Interesting. And Yahushua routed Amalek and all his people with the slaughter of the sword. And Yahuwah said to Masha, write this for a memorial in a book. Interesting. And speak this in the ears of Yahushua, for I will utterly blot out the memorial of Amalek from under heaven. Woo! That's not good. That's not good at all. It sounds like a similar curse to Canaan. And Masha built an altar to Yahuwah and called the name of it Yahuwah my refuge. Interesting. For with a secret hand, Yahuwah wages war upon Amalek to all generations. And it's interesting that earlier Brother Joshua was mentioning the correlations between Enoch and the Septuagints. Interesting to note that this version right here of the verse that says a secret hand, it's funny to note that in the book of Enoch, it says the Son of Man was hidden from the world from the beginning. So I just find that interesting for what it's worth, that the right hand of Yahuwah in this verse here is called a secret hand. I just find that interesting for what that's worth. Okay, so we're done with the Exodus portion here. Oh, and go ahead, Brother Joshua, before I hand the reading over to my mom here.
Isn't there a verse that refers to Yahushua as being a hidden arrow or a hidden shaft in his do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget where that is. I think that's in Isaiah, or I'm trying to remember where exactly. I do know there's a verse in Proverbs.
Isaiah 49:2. It says, he has made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he has kept me hidden, and he has made me a sharpened arrow in his quiver.
Wow. I know. Also, there's a verse in Proverbs where it talks about, it's very generic in the modern versions, like where it will say, it's the esteem of kings to search out a matter, and it's the esteem of Yahuwah. It's the esteem of Yahuwah to hide a matter, but it's the esteem of kings to seek out a matter. And if you look at the Peshitta version of it, it says it's the esteem of Yahuwah to hide the word. So we see this concept of Yahushua being hidden from the majority of mankind, almost like a election predestination thing. And it's pretty interesting. So here in the Septuagint, that verse we just read in Exodus 17, verse 16, calls the right hand of Yahuwah a secret hand in the Septuagint. So I find that interesting. Referring to that it has to be revealed. So I find that interesting. Mom, I want, if you could, you think you could read Judges chapter 4-5?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. Here, I think I want to put the share screen on the Word software here. You ready?
All set?
Yeah.
Okay, Judges chapter 4. After Ehud died, the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah. So Yahuwah sold them into the hands of Jabin, a king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim, because he had 900 iron chariots and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to Yahuwah for help. Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Yashrael at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Asherites came to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yashrael, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, and his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Very well, Deborah said. I will go with you, but because of the way you are going about this, the honor will not be yours. For Yahuwah will hand Sisera over to a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh, where he summoned Zebulun and Naphtali. 10,000 men followed them. And Deborah also went with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Obab, Masha's brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zananim near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera gathered together his 900 iron chariots and all the men with him from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River. Then Deborah said to Barak, go, this is the day Yahuwah has given Sisera into your hands. Has not Yahuwah gone ahead of you? So Barak went down Mount Tabor, followed by 10,000 men. At Barak's advance, Yahushua routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword. And Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled on foot. But Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim. All the troops of Sisera fell by the sword, not a man was left. Sisera, however, fled on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because they were friendly relations between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite. Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, come, my sovereign, come right in, don't be afraid. So he entered her tent, and she put a covering over him. I'm thirsty, he said. Please give me some water. She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. Stand in the doorway of the tent, he told her. If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone here, say no. But Yael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep. Exhausted, she drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Yael went out to meet him. Come, she said, I will show you the man you're looking for. So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through the temple dead. On that day, Yahuwah subdued Jabin, the Canaanite king, before the Yashreelites, and the hand of the Yashreelites grew stronger and stronger against Jabin, the Canaanite king, until they destroyed him. Chapter 5. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. When the princes in Yashrael take the lead, when the people willingly offer themselves, praise Yahuwah. Hear this, you kings. Listen, you rulers. I will sing to Yahuwah, I will sing. I will make music to Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel. O Yahuwah, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water. The mountains quaked before Yahuwah, the one of Sinai, before Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yashrael. In the days of Shamgar, son of Enoch, in the days of Yael, the roads were abandoned. Travelers took to winding paths. Village life in Yashrael ceased until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Yashrael. When they chose new mighty ones, war came to the city gates, and not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Yashrael. My heart is with Yashrael's princes, with the willing volunteers among the people. Praise Yahuwah. You who ride on white donkeys, sitting on your saddle blankets, and you who walk along the road, consider the voice of the singers at the watering places. They recite the righteous acts of Yahuwah, the righteous acts of his warriors in Yashrael. Then the people of Yahuwah went down to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah, wake up, break out in song. Arise, O Barak, take captive your captives, O son of Abinoam. Then the men who were left came down to the nobles, the people of Yahuwah, came to me with the mighty. Some came from Ephraim, whose roots were in Amalek. Benjamin was with the people who followed you. From Machir, captains came down. From Zebulun, those who bear a commander's staff. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah, yet Issachar was with Barak, rushing after him into the valley. In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Why did you stay among the campfires to hear the whistling for the flocks? In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he linger by the ships? Asher remained on the seacoast and stayed in his coves. The people of Zebulun risked their very lives. So did Naphtali on the heights of the field. Kings came, they fought. The kings of Canaan fought at Tanakh by the waters of Megiddo, but they carried off no silver, no plunder. From the heavens the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away, the age-old river, the river Kishon, march on, my soul, be strong. Then thundered the horses' hoofs, galloping go his mighty steeds. Curse Meroz, said the angel of Yahuwah, curse its people bitterly, because they did not come to help Yahuwah against the mighty. Most blessed of women be Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank. He fell, there he lay. At her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he fell dead. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she cried out, Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed? The wisest of her ladies answered her. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, are they not finding and dividing the spoils? A girl or two for each man? Colorful garments as plunder for Sisera. Colorful garments embroidered. Highly embroidered garments for my neck. All this as plunder? So may all your enemies perish, O Yahuwah, but may they who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. Then the land had peace 40 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed Joshua has his hand up, so I'm gonna give it over to him real quick, but I wanted to make a little note of chapter 5. I found it interesting. We always talk about stars, and we really don't know. What we've been taught about stars seems to be a definitely lie. They're not stationary. They definitely are not a ball of gas here. I'll show you right here what I'm referring to in chapter 5, where it talks about Sisera. It says the stars fought against Sisera. So stars can fight. They can go in battle. Okay. Let me see if I can find that verse real quick. Where it says
Verse 20.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, this is what I wanted to get to here, because I showed people that are still holding on to the heliocentric model. If stars are what we're told they are, this verse does not make any logical sense. It says the stars from heaven set themselves in array. Now, that modern British terminology, that means they got ready to war. They're about to go to war with Sisera. So what it sounds like to me is that Judges 5:20 is hinting that stars are angels there. Okay, so they're an army that's setting themselves in array against to fight a human king. I mean, essentially, that's what that verse is saying. So that would actually go along with Revelations chapter 1, which literally tells you stars are angels. They're messengers. They're malachim. Okay. So to me, that was an important verse that I came across when I started studying into that topic a while ago, what stars actually are. So after that, now I'm done with going down that minor rabbit trail. I'm going to let Brother Joshua take over here.
I get a couple things. Verse 29, it uses the term wise ladies or wise women, kind of like the wise men. I would assume they're talking about diviners or astrologers or something like that. But in verse 4 and 4, it calls Deborah a prophetess, which would line up with New Testament, because you have women being in the role of prophetess, or being able to prophesy in the book of Acts. So that kind of leads me to the question of what particularly was a judge. Was a judge just someone that they came to, kind of like how Moses set the elders over Yasharal to debate or to settle matters? Or was it someone that actually was teaching doctrine?
I think judges were more or less from what we get in scripture. I don't know if they're mainly supposed to be, I doubt they're supposed to be teachers of doctrine. I do think they have to know the scriptures somewhat, because they have to be, they have to know certain matters, whether one person is right or wrong in certain matters, they would have to know some type of doctrine. So
It said she was leading Israel at the time. So
No, the literal. Well, the NIV is paraphrasing there. It's
judging.
the
Yeah, I see
literal.
footnote
The literal
says
is judge.
judging.
Like the NIV,
Okay,
they'll
okay.
admit themselves they're a paraphrase. They're a paraphrased translation of the Bible. They're not a
Well, they
word
had
for
a
word.
footnote. I didn't see it right.
Yeah,
It
the
said-
NIV in general though paraphrases the majority of the time. So leading, judging, that's like a synonym.
So if
Yeah.
she was just solving matters when people would come to her, then she technically wasn't in a position of
No,
leadership over men. So there was, I know some people take that, the story of Deborah and use that to support,
Yeah.
the leadership role of
No.
women in the assembly.
Yeah, she definitely was not teaching doctrine to men, and I'm not even saying help a brother out with doctrine is a problem, but when you have a woman putting herself in a leadership position over men, that's where the problem lies, and that's what Paul would be talking about in the New Testament in context. For example, I wouldn't take the extreme literal that Paul talks about. People don't look at the context and they see the verse. Paul says women should be silent. That doesn't mean a woman can't speak in the assembly. They're missing like a lot of context, a historical context to that, is that women were usurping men's authority in the assembly, and they were over speaking and challenging authority historically around that time period. They were trying basically what you see today, female shepherds.
Mhm.
That's not biblical. There should not a female pastor is just not biblical. When you look at the overall message of what the Torah and the prophets and what the Brit Hadashah teach, it's women have a place in the assembly. They have an important place in the assembly, but they're not supposed to be at the top of the assembly.
Mhm.
They're even women that are married to elders. The men who are elders are the leaders, So when it talks about a man should be at least have one wife to be elder, overseer, and all that the man is the one actually leading the assembly. It's not the other way around. So I think there's a lot of misinformation about Paul's letters, why people don't understand the roles that men and women play in the congregation, and how to be harmonious with that. You could say that blueprint Paul put out for us and the other apostles put out for us, warning about women usurping men's authority. It's really the natural nature of women since the fall, that they want to usurp men in the assembly. They feel the need to try to, I guess you could say, chop block spiritually men and try to take their place, because that's a natural inclination, especially when you look at the context of what I believe Yahuwah actually meant in other translations like the NIV and the NLT paraphrase, when it says your desire shall be for your husband. I know the traditional interpretation of that is referring to physical desire. That's not what it's referring to. I believe when Yahuwah said that to Kua, the context was your desire is going to be you want to rule over your husband. You're going to have, it's almost like she was cursed. Her sinful flesh was cursed to always want to be above Adam, always want to upchuck Adam, always want to be the head instead of the tail. And then that's something that we deal with today in the body of Messiah, is women, the majority of the women, even sisters of my generation pertainly, because it seems like it's the newer generation that are very deceived by this feminist garbage, that can't unlearn it, and they don't want to submit and allow men to be over them, to be leaders of the fellowship, if that makes any sense. It's this natural sinful flesh that's constantly causing them to want to take the authority from the men in the fellowship. And I've seen it before. It's gotten very volatile where certain sisters just, I've seen it in person where they don't want to be subjective to the brothers and allow the brothers to lead. Now, on the other side, we have sisters in this fellowship like Sister Josie, who is very submissive and very respectful, and Sister Sadia, I would say too. But there are sisters out there in the body of Messiah that are still struggling with that feminist garbage that's been embedded in their mind.
I would say that it's also vice versa, that you have men that are dealing with a feministic spirit and just don't want to lead. They want to be subjected.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I definitely agree.
It's
the problem is men don't want to be leaders. Men don't want to be men, and vice versa. I think actually to prove that's what's going on with Deborah, if you really, we just read it in my mom just read it in chapter 4, where she's rebuking the guy saying, well, by the way, since you want me to go before you, guess what? You're getting no credit for this. Like, it's not a good thing. Yeah. Like, people, it cracks me up. They love to look at this story of Deborah like it's a good thing. It's a bad thing.
Yeah, it is a bad thing.
She's chastising the guy, for goodness sakes. It's not like she wants his role. She's chastising him. Mm-hmm. She's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a man.
That's right.
You know, to paraphrase, you're supposed to be a man. Since you're not being a man, you don't got no huevos, as you would say in Spanish. You know, I'm gonna have to do your job for you. And actually, another woman actually gets the credit for killing the guy that he's supposed to kill. So in actuality, he's berated by Deborah here, and then he gets no credit for Yasharel's victory. So I don't see the positive in this story that this is a template for the first century assembly. I just don't see it. I mean, I have a lot of respect for brothers like Lex Meyer and them out there, but when it comes to that, sorry, I respectfully disagree with Lex and other brothers out there that are trying to advocate female pastorship. I don't see it. I don't see it in scripture. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents of that, you know, but anyway, so anyway, I think we're going to move on here. But like I said, we do have sisters that understand their roles in the assembly, like even within our own assembly. We have many sisters that understand the subjection part and the fact of how the assembly is supposed to be run. So, you know, I'm not saying every sister out there has this problem, but I do notice it's a growing problem overall in the Hebraic roots movement, the Torah and Messiah movement, whatever you want to call it. It's a growing problem. It's taking that Christian tradition that's been embedded in us and feminist tradition, unfortunately. I think it's a growing problem. I think we really need to try to help one another understand that we need to allow Yahuwah's Ruach to reform our mind. That includes what we've been taught about men and women's roles in society are not biblical. The way, you know, equality, Yahuwah didn't mean for us to be equal. No. I mean, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day that I would have to go through a lot of scriptures to show you what I mean by that. But once the fall happened, Adam and Kua were not equal. He said, Adam will rule over you. He straight up said to Kua. So, I mean, again, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But anyway. All right. So, Brother Joshua, since you've been doing a great job with cross references and being very active today, I think we'll have you end us with Matthew chapter 14. Just so.
Gotcha.
Get the screen up here.
Oh, it's cold. It's cold. All right, Matthew 14. Can y'all hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, I'm coming from the Etheridge version of the Peshitta. Matthew 14. In that time, Herodes Tetrarcha heard the rumor concerning Yahushua, and he said to his servants, "This is Yehukanan the baptizer, or the immerser. He hath risen from the house of the dead, therefore powerful works are wrought by him. For he Herodes had seized Yehochanan and bound him and cast him into the house of the chained, because of Herodia, the wife of Philip his brother. For Yehochanan had said to him, "It is not lawful that she should be to you a wife." And he would have killed him, but he feared the people, because as a prophet they held him. But at the birthday of Herodias, the daughter of Herodia, danced before those who reclined, and she pleased Herodes. Wherefore, with an oath he swore to her to give her whatever she should demand. Then she, because instructed by her mother, said, "Give me here in a dish the head of Yehochanan the baptizer." And the king sickened, yet on account of the oath and the guests, he commanded that it should be given to her. And he sent cut off. I think this is interesting that you have a heathen a heathen king actually, abiding by that rule of keeping your oath. And he sent cut off the head of Yehochanan in the house of the chained, and his head was brought in a dish and given to the girl, and she carried it herself to her mother. And his disciples came near, took up his corpse, buried it, and came and showed Yahushua. Then Yahushua, when he heard, removed from thence by ship to a desert place by himself. And when the multitude heard it, they came after him on dry land from the cities. And Yahushua came forth and saw great multitudes and felt compassion for them and healed their diseases. But when it was eventide, his disciples approached him and said to him, "The place is desert, and the time passed over. Send away these multitudes of men, that they may go to the villages and buy for themselves food." But he said to them, "It is not needful that they should go. You give them to eat." They said to him, "We have nothing here but 5 cakes and 2 fishes. Yahushua said to them, "Bring them hither to me." And he directed the multitudes to recline upon the ground, and he took the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and looked up to Shamayim, and broke, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples placed it before the multitudes, and all did eat and were satisfied. And they took up of the abundance of the fragments 12 baskets when full. Now those men who had eaten were 5,000, besides women and children. And immediately he constrained his disciples to ascend into the bark. I'm guessing that should say boat. That's weird. Immediately he constrained his disciples to ascend into the bark and proceed before him to the other shore, while he was dismissing the crowds. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to a mountain by himself to pray. And when it was dark, he alone was there. But the vessel was distant from the land, many stadia, being greatly beaten with the waves, for the wind was against them. But in the 4th watch of the night, I'm guessing that would be around like 3 to 6 in the morning, Yahushua came to them walking upon, I think that's the last watch. Yahushua came to them walking upon the waters, and the disciples beheld him walking on the waters, and they were troubled, saying that it was a ghost. And from fear they cried out. But Yahushua at once spoke to them and said, "Take courage, I am, fear not." And Kepha answered and said to him, "My master, if it be you, command me to come to you upon the waters." Yahushua said to him, "Come." And Kepha descended from the ship and walked on the waters to go to Yahushua. But when he saw the furious wind, he feared and began to sink. And he lifted up his voice and said, "My master, deliver me." Immediately our master reached forth his hand and seized him and said to him, "Little of faith, why are you divided in mind?" Almost seems to point to like double-mindedness. Why are you divided in mind? And when they had ascended into the ship, the wind was tranquil. And they who were in the ship came and adored him and said, "Truly the Son you are of Yahuwah." And they rowed and came to the land of Gennesaret. And the men of that country recognized him and sent to all the villages that were about them. And they brought to him all those who were grievously afflicted and besought from him that they might touch only the border of his mantle. And those who touched were healed. And that's Matthew 14.
Boy, that speaks to me a lot. You know?
Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah. I have to have that faith, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. That's you know, something to consider when I lack faith,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I know I'm getting out of here on Yahuwah's time. He is preparing things. It's lonely. I've cried, you know, I have Yahuwah with me, you know, but sometimes being alone for hours and hours, it gets a little stir crazy. You know what I mean? And nurses are so busy, they can't attend you,
No.
you know. So it's been, you know, I think Yahuwah willing, I might be going home next week, maybe. They're gonna decannulate. Oh, sorry, we're recording. But we'll go back. You know what? I mean, for Peter to say, Yahushua, if that is you, call me. And he started to walk. But you know, we faint. And I think that we've all fainted in heart at times. And Abba, forgive me. Forgive us all for having those weak times. Because we have to trust in you.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, sis.
We will keep you heavily in prayer. Heavily in prayer. Yeah.
So I noticed something when we were looking at this chapter here. This is why I really like the Aramaic New Testament here. It says, it doesn't just say, it is I. It says, but Yahushua immediately spoke with them and he said, take heart, I am the living Elohim. Do not be afraid. So we see the oneness there right here. So people always say to me all the time, he never claimed to be the Father. He never literally said he's the Father. You might want to look at the Peshitta New Testament. He claimed to be the Father all the time. Every time he said I am, he's referring to the Ahar Ashaya, the I am that I am. So when he's saying I am, and this is why most translators that understand this concept, that in Hebrew, I am is the Ahar Ashaya. What is it called? The Asher Ahaya.
Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So the even English translators understand that concept, and that's why they put it in bold sometimes in the New Testament where he says I am, they'll put the I am in all caps.
Right.
So they get that he's referring to that, which the Peshitta is showing that too. He's saying I am the living Elohim,
Right.
which goes back to Exodus 3:4, where he says I am who I am. Okay, so obviously it's not just, oh, I am the Messiah, because a lot of people will just say, oh, he's just saying he's the Messiah. No, he's saying a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mhm.
Kapha answered. So I like how the Aramaic shows that his name's Kapha here. My master, if you are he, command me to come unto you on the water. So interesting that Kapha is actually saying, he's still got a little doubt. And he's like, if you are him, if you are he, command me to come into the water, or with you onto the water. So Yahusha, so I think Kapha, who's called Peter, definitely understands that in the Tanakh. Yahuwah, many times in the Tanakh, it's said that Yahuwah is the only one that could command the waters. And, he stills the waters. So I think Kapha actually understood that. And that's why he said that back to Yahushua. You know, if you really are he, you meaning if you're really the living Elohim. And Yahushua said to him, come. And Kapha went down to the ship, and he walked on the water to come to Yahushua. And when he saw the wind was violent, he was afraid and began to sink, and he raised his voice. He said, my master, save me. And immediately our master stretched out his hand, and he beheld him and said to him, O small of faith, why do you doubt? And when they came up into the ship, the wind stopped. So when we look at the whole story there, I kind of see that it's not just that. I think he's saying he's doubting, not just because he was afraid of the water, but because he was afraid, because he even doubted who Yahushua just told him who he was. So you see, literally, he says, you know, tell me to come unto you to the water if you are who you say you are, pretty much. So I think the doubt even started in verse 29 before he even got on the water. He's like, he's not fully trusting that Yahushua is Yahuwah there, which I can kind of see from a lot of us. We are, you know, Yahushua could say it 1,000 times, you know, I am the living Elohim, but it seems like we just lack faith sometimes. You know, so then it says, and those who were in the ship came and they worshiped him. And people say that Yahushua never told anyone to worship him, but at the same time, he never told anyone to not worship him. And he allowed people to worship him.
Right.
So if he's just a man, then we got a blasphemy problem here. Mm-hmm. If he's just a man, he's not the creator. He's allowing them to worship him. Mm-hmm. And then it says, you are the son of Alua, or the son of Elohim, which the ESV here has like about 20 cross references for that phrase, the son of Elohim. Matthew 4:3, Matthew 8:29, Matthew 27:40, Mark 3:11, Mark 5:7, Luke 4 verse 3, Luke 8:28.
That's probably why John uses that version.
Yeah, I don't know if he has this version. He probably has an older version. This is like the electronic version of the 2011 ESV. So it's a specific edition that has all these cross references. Luke 22:70, 2 Corinthians 1:19, Hebrews 1:2, 1 John 4:15. So many places Yahushua is called the son of Elohim. All right. So that's all I wanted to bring up. I thought that was interesting about that point there in Matthew 14:27. Go ahead, Joshua. If you got anything you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, give me just a second. I'm looking at the difference between the 65:7 and the Septuagint because I'm not sure if it says what I thought it said. I'm not sure if there's another verse in the Septuagint that would point to this, but in the Masoretic it says, which by his strength, in 65:6 and 7, which by his strength setteth fast the mountains, being girded with power, which stills the noise of the seas, the noise of their waves, and the tumult of the people. I think it's interesting, and I'm not exactly sure what it would, if it would point to like him having, you know, authority over the nations, but you have the seas being, allegorical for nations. And then you have that verse in Psalms talking about the kind of referring to him not only stilling the noise of the seas, but also the tumult of the people. So I'm wondering if there's like a spiritual significance aside from, with him walking on the water, pointing to the nations. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, that is a cool connection. This shows you how messed up the world is. I'm looking for the verse that talks about he commands the seas, and then they give me this false god here. Wow. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, it shows you how ignorant they are. They really think Poseidon commands the seas. Yeah, okay. All right. So here's the verse I was thinking of. I think Brother Josh was also thinking of too. Psalm 65, verse 7, who stilled the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and the tumult of the nations. Now, the NIV seems to connect what you're talking about allegorically, nations with the seas, almost like a physical with allegorical combination. Because he actually it says the roaring of the waves and the tumult of nations. So it seems to kind of include allegorical and physical in one verse, the way the NIV puts it, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. I like how the NLT puts it. You quieted the raging oceans with their pounding waves and silenced the shouting of the nations. Yeah. So that's interesting. I believe Psalm 65:7 is referring to the same thing that Yahushua does. And we see it in multiple other places in the Brit Hadashah. Matthew 8 seems to be another instance with the sea thing where it says, you have little faith. Yahushua replied, why are you so afraid? And he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it was perfectly calm. This is the time, I guess, before this point. This is the other time where they're afraid in the boat, and the storm's actually making the sea go all the way into the boat. And they're worried about sinking. And then, Yahushua just rebukes it with his own mouth.
About a year ago, I kind of came to a totally different feeling about that whole thing, in that why he didn't have to put his hand down in the water. He spoke. Yeah. And I said to myself, you know why that is? Because he spoke them into existence. Mm-hmm. Because they know his voice. Mm-hmm. And they mm-hmm. worship. Not only do they obey, but they worship his voice as their creator. And I said, it all came together at that moment. I said, yeah, of course, it only took the sound of his voice, because that's how they were formed. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems it was very exciting to me to really see that, when I had never saw it before like that.
Yeah.
This verse in Psalms 107:29, it almost seems to be a direct prophecy of what you just mentioned when they were afraid and he was asleep in the boat. It says, and he commands the storm. Back in 107:27, they are troubled, they stagger as a drunkard, and all their wisdom is swallowed up. Then they cry to Yahuwah in their affliction, and he brings them out of their distresses, and he commands the storm, and it is calmed into a gentle breeze, and its waves are still. And they are glad because they are quiet, and he guides them to their desired haven.
Yeah. There's a couple of times in the Psalms where it's showing that Yahuwah controls the seas. You got Psalms 89:9, you rule the raging sea. When its waves mount up, you still them. So this is actually showing that Yahushua is Yahuwah here, because this is exactly what he did in Matthew 14 we just read about. He literally stilled them when they're raging. And there's another verse that I know this Christian...
That would also point to him making the waves of the sea congeal up into a wall by stilling them in Exodus.
Yeah. First, does Nicole C. Mullen get that psalm? My Redeemer lives, where she has a verse in the lyrics where it talks about he told the seas, he set a boundary. I think she quotes from like Job or something. He set boundaries for the sea for there not to go to a certain
point.
Here we go. Proverbs 8. Now you can get this in the Septuagint and Masoretic text, by the way, that this is pointing to Yahushua and Yahuwah as the same person, because it's Proverbs 8:29 here. It says, when he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command.
That's right.
When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Now the foundations, FYI, are like they're the pillars of the earth. So you have like these pillars that are holding the disk of the earth. So just to kind of show like what we're referring to, okay, like FYI. See here. Okay. Flat earth model. Okay. And let's go to try to see if we can find a picture that shows you the pillars of the earth. Okay, here we go. Here's a decent one. It's not exactly a perfect rendition of it, but you can kind of see what he's talking about, the foundations of the earth. You got the four corners of the earth, right? So you got, these are where the pillars would be, where each messenger is standing. So you kind of got like, it's kind of like, if you could picture it, it would be like a disc. And then outside the disc, you have like these rectangular, I would say like rectangular corners. Okay. And this is where the pillars would be on each side, the four corners. So this is the foundations of the earth that Yahuwah would have founded. Okay. So Job is like one of those books in the Bible. If you really take it literally, it will really test you to take the true cosmology of the earth seriously, because Job, man, there's so many verses where he's talking about how the earth actually looks. This is a reason why I believe Job has to predate Genesis as far as when it was written. This is one of the reasons I believe that, because when you look at the book of Job, it constantly is talking about the shape of the earth, the way the earth looks. Myth. Yeah. Okay. It's not a myth. That's what the world wants you to think. It's a myth. Let me see here if I can kind of show a better rendition here of what the pillars of the earth would look like. I think I know what Rob called his version. Let me see. I think it's called. By the way, certain versions of the Bible actually call the rakia, the firmament, a dome. FYI, if you got a complete Jewish Bible, it says that. All right, so I didn't want to go on the video. Okay, so right here, you got. Let me see if I can get a better zoomed in picture or something of it. Okay, so this essentially is the domed earth. Okay, so you got like the firmament is like the top of the snow globe. Okay, it's a dome. It's a hard glass dome. That's the firmament. Then you got the second heaven, which is the waters above. You know, that's why the sky's blue all the time. And then you got the third heaven up here, where it's like gold up here, where Yahuwah's throne would be. And then you see these like hard things on the edges. Those are the pillars. Those are the foundations of the earth. So essentially, when I read the book of Job and it starts talking about the background of the creation, starts going into details how Yahuwah created things that you really don't get in the Genesis creation account, to me, Job is describing this, or Yahuwah, we could say Yahuwah is talking to Job, describing his creation. And actually, if we're going to be technical, Yahushua's speaking here in Proverbs 8. And I'll show you why, how we know this is Yahushua as wisdom talking here. Okay. Go to Proverbs 8, start at like verse 22. It says, Yahuwah made me the beginning of his ways for his works. So meaning Yahushua pre-existed before the creation. Okay. So we could say that Yahushua was the tool. He is the source of creation, as Revelations 3:14 in the Peshitta says. He is the source of the creation of Yahuwah. So he's the co-creator, essentially, according to Proverbs 8:22. He established me before time was in the beginning, before he made the earth. Even before he made the depths, before the fountains of waters came forth. Before the mountains were settled and before all hills, he begets me. Yahuwah made the countries and inhabited tracts and the highest inhabited parts of the world. When he prepared the heavens, mind you, the heavens were created before the earth, FYI. They existed before the earth. So this is way in the beginning Yahushua is referring to here. When he prepared the heavens, I was present with him. When he prepared the throne, his throne upon the winds, and when he strengthened the clouds above, when he secured the fountains of the earth. So now he's talking about the fountains of the deep, the waters below. And when he strengthened the foundations of the earth, I was by him, suiting myself to him. I was that in he took delight. And daily I rejoiced in his presence continually. So Proverbs 8 is talking about the whole creation here, and even stuff before the events of Genesis 1, technically. This is like predating that in the way it's talking about it. So it seems like King Solomon is kind of being inspired just the way that whoever wrote the book of Job is being inspired to write about things that predated the events of Genesis 1, where Genesis 1 is already fast forwarding to the creation of the earth. The heavens are already there in Genesis 1:1. So you have like the firmament. The firmament was created, during the first 6 days, but you already had pretty much Yahuwah's throne already created and all that, like the winds and all that. He already had his throne created before the earth was created. So Proverbs 8 kind of goes into some stuff that seems chronologically to predate Genesis 1, which seems to me, since Job talks about certain things like that in the book of Job, seems.
38, yeah, I'm looking right at it.
What?
He said, when I said, this far you may come and no farther. So Yahuwah is actually saying that right there, I'm the one who allowed the ocean, the waves to go just so far.
What was that?
And not any further. I've been looking for it for the last 5 minutes. It's in chapter 38.
Of Job?
Of Job. And there Yahuwah starts saying all the things. Were you this? Did you do this? Did you do that? All the different variations. And verse
38 is a really good chapter.
And who shut up the sea behind doors? And he says, when I said this far you may come and no farther.
Yeah, right here. Where were you when I founded the earth? So he's referring to now the 6 days of creation there, which the Hebraic Roots Bible puts Genesis 1:1 right there. I like how the Hebraic Roots Bible translator puts also Proverbs 30 verse 4, referring to the oneness of Yahuwah and Yahushua in Proverbs chapter 30 verse 4. Who set measures of it? Do you know? Or who stretched a line upon it? And what are its rings fastened? So the earth has rings. Mm-hmm. And who set and laid the cornerstone upon it? When the stars were made, all my angels praised me with a loud voice. You can find that Job 1:6, that sons of Elohim are angels. Mm-hmm. Okay, and also Genesis 6:2. But I shut up the sea, the gates, when it rushed out, coming forth out its mother's womb. So now he's allegorically referring to the womb of the earth, as a mother and all that. And FYI, he's not calling it Mother Earth. I know there's going to be some Gnostics out there that are going to put some eisegesis on that text and, see, Mother Earth, that's biblical. No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay, it's not divine. The earth is not divine. We are not divine. Okay, this is nonsense. Stop. Okay, it's allegory. Okay, it's allegorical. All right, and I made a cloud its clothing and swathed it in the midst. And I set boundaries to it, surrounding it with bars and gates. So I think he's referring to the sea of the abyss there in context. And I said to it, oh, good God, Sir Lancelot, hitherto? Really? No, here shall you come, but you shall not go beyond, but your waves shall be confined within you. So again, we see constantly Yahuwah is the only one that can do that. So for Yahushua to command the sea, to calm the sea like the way he does, he has to be the Father.
That's right.
Okay. And then it goes on through the whole, but Job 38 is a really good chapter to fully understand the creation, because Genesis 1 kind of gives you like an overview, but to understand the shape of the earth, what the earth looks like, the foundations of the deep it goes into in the book of Job. Job kind of gives you the it gives you a expounding on the creation account. Or did I order the morning light in your time? Did the morning star then first see his appointed place? Now, I in this context, I don't think the morning star is referring to Yahushua. I think what it's referring to is just angels in general. Sometimes the translator mistranslates it as the morning star. I'm pretty sure the word "the" is not even there. Yeah, it's not there. The English word "the" is not there. So it would say early in the morning and early morning. The word for morning star is Helios or Helios. So it just means light. It's not exactly meaning like the morning star referring to Yahushua. It just means a star, an angel. Okay. Behold his own order. And I think in other translations, they don't put morning star. That seems to be a translation error. To take hold of the ends of the earth and wrong be shaken out of it. It is changed like clay under a seal. And this is another way it gives you the shape of the earth here too. Or did you take clay of the ground and form a living creature and set it with power of speech upon the earth? So now Yahuwah is basically saying to Job, did you form Adam out of the earth? Did you do that? Have you removed light from the wicked and crushed the arm of the proud? Have you gone to the source of the sea and walked in the tracks of the deep? And do the gates of death open to you for fear? So now he's talking about Sheol, Hades. Do the gates of death, the underworld, open to you for fear? Did the porters of Sheol or hell quake when they saw you? See, we don't get this in Genesis. We don't get all these other portions of the earth in Genesis. So Genesis is kind of like an overview. Have you been instructed in the breadth of the whole earth? Breath. So the earth has a breath, breadth sometimes is what, like area, what was it, like circumference?
Oh, yeah.
Like
height and breadth. Yeah.
Tell me now, what is the extent of it? And in what kind of a land does the light dwell? What kind is the place of darkness? If you could bring me to their utmost boundaries, and if also you knew their paths, I know then that you were born at that time. At the number of your years is great. But have you gone to the treasures of snow? Have you seen the treasuries of hail? A lot of what Job's talking about, believe it or not, if you read the book of Enoch, a lot of it's similar. Mm-hmm. Like Enoch's shown where the hail is, where the hail frost is, where the snow is treasured up in heaven. So a lot of what Yahuwah is like, he's kind of being facetious with Job about, he showed that to Enoch. It's kind of interesting. So he's like, do you know where these things are? Do you know where the treasuries of snow and hail are? And is there a store of them for you against the time of your enemies, for the day of wars and battle? And whence proceed the frost, or where is the south wind dispersed over the whole world under heaven? And who prepared a course for the violent rain and a way for the thunder? So even rain has a course. Like the way it falls, it's supposed to, go where Yahuwah tells it to go. To rain upon the land where there is no man, the wilderness where there is not a man in it, so as to feed the untrodden, uninhabited land, and cause it to send forth a crop of green herbs. Who is the rain's father, and who has generated the crops of dew? Out of whose womb comes the ice? And who has the produce, the frost in the sky, which descends the flowing water? Who has terrified the face of the wicked? And do you understand the band of the Pleiades, and have you opened the barrier of Orion? So again, we don't know the original terms of these. I mean, you got to remember too, like these, when they're translating the Septuagint, they're translating Hebrew into Greek, there's really probably no legitimate name for the constellations in Greek. They're going to be all pagan. It's just the way it goes. I mean, Greek is a pagan culture. So you got to understand too, like the Septuagint, by the time the Septuagint is translated, we're not even at the original Greek language. This is like Koine Greek. Okay, so and it talks about, and I think Mazarov here is a mistranslation, or maybe it is there. Okay, all right. But I noticed that it's supposed to actually say Midian, not even Mazarov. I notice here it's G3099. It says, or will you open Madian in its time? So technically, Brenton kind of mistranslated that. It seems like should say, will you reveal Median in his season? The evening star with his rays, will you guide them? So I just have a funny feeling Mazarov was inserted later on into that verse. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I would also add that we don't even have the original Hebrew names, the months anymore. I think we only have 2. But for the most part, you have Babylonian names, even, for the months in the scriptures.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know some people like to use that verse when it talks about it's inserted term there, the Mazarov, and they like to use that as well. See, he's talking about revealing the Mazarov, so shouldn't we know the Mazarov? That's not what he's saying. The context is that he's saying, do you know the constellations? Do you know, were you the one to put them in the sky? That's the point. Yahuwah is not saying go and practice the Jewish version of the zodiac. He's not saying that. For goodness sakes, guys, man, you're really getting desperate when you're doing that. When you're what is it called? Using mental gymnastics on the scriptures. Like, come on. That's not the point of the verse. So when he's talking about Pleiades and Orion and like that, he's not saying search out their alignments. He's saying, do you understand? Do you have understanding the arrangement? Like, that's what he's saying. He's like, do you understand that I put all these constellations in order? That's what he's saying. He's not saying go out and use divination. Good gosh, man. It's like, come on. Like, just take what scripture says literally. We got to stop with this whole trying to eisegetically insert stuff into scripture. It's getting ridiculous. Will you call a cloud with your violence? Will it obey you? The clouds even obey him with a violent shower of much rain. And will you send lightnings, and they shall go? And shall they say to you, what is your pleasure? Who has given to women skill in weaving? This is what I was talking about before, how there is physical gifts. Physical gifts is scriptural. We like to always focus on what Paul talks about in the Brit about spiritual gifts, which are legitimate, but there's also literal physical gifts that he gives us that you see in the Tanakh a lot. And Job is referencing something you see later on in Exodus where Yahuwah has baruched women with her certain gift to weave and stuff like that, and how they're making the tabernacle. So Job here is mentioning what we see later on in the Torah. It says, who has given to women skill in weaving or knowledge of embroidery? So it seems like Yahuwah purposefully gave women that skill, and that it seems that's one of their jobs to do. Seems like.
No, it's not one of my gifts. I'll tell you that much right now. So the gifts are different.
Who is he that numbers the clouds in wisdom? Find it interesting the way that's worded in the Septuagint. He numbers the clouds in wisdom. So you see Yahushua is involved there. So Yahushua is part of the numbering of the clouds. Like he's involved. That's interesting. It has bowed the heaven down to the earth. Interesting. For it is spread out as a dusty earth, and I have cemented it as hewn stone to another. And will you hunt a prey for the lions and satisfy the desires of the serpents? For they fear in their lairs, and lying in wait couch in the woods. Who has prepared food for the raven? For its young ones wander and cry to Yahuwah in search of food. So you see, the whole point of that chapter is to show how, Yahuwah is trying to humble Job and say, listen, who are you to set a case against me, to judge your creator? Who are you to complain because you got a little bit of hardship? That's the whole point of that chapter. He's trying to get through to him, like, why are you being like so complaining and whiny? Like because Job, he goes through a lot, but he gets to the point where he's just whining. He's depressed.
I'd be better off dead.
I'd be better off dead. And Yahuwah kind of, he's letting him vent and stuff, but he vents a little too much. He's like, all right, now I got to put you back in your place. All right. You're the creation. I'm the creator. Now it's time to put stuff back in order. But we see here in Job 38, the how Yahuwah set a law for the sea in Job 38:11. So that's why we went to Job 38. And I'm kind of glad we went through the whole cosmos thing and how I did want to show for a long time to a lot of people the correct view of what the earth would look like if we were able to actually have a satellite out there and actually take a real picture of the earth rather than the CGI crud that we're given today. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, our brothers and sisters out there and all the viewers